Today, I want to ask you a question that changed the way I look at almost everything. What has your survival strategy cost you? Not what has it given you, not how it protected you, not how it helped you survive. What has it cost you? Because if you're anything like me, you've probably spent years trying to fix yourself. You're trying to become more confident, more disciplined, more productive, more successful, maybe more healed. And maybe you've wondered why, despite all the books, all the courses, therapy, coaching, and personal development, something still feels missing. What if the answer isn't that you're broken? What if the answer is that you've become incredibly good at surviving? And somewhere along the way, survival quietly became your identity. Today isn't about judging that. It's actually about honoring it and understanding it, and then asking whether the strategy that's protected you all these years is now asking you to pay a price that is simply too high. If this sounds like you, stay with me. This is going to be a good one. Hello, and welcome to the Aligned Human Project. I'm your host, Dawn Elgin. If you've ever looked around at your life that appears successful on the outside, but feels disconnected on the inside, you are in the right place. If you've ever wondered why you keep repeating the same patterns, carrying the same emotional weight, or chasing goals that never quite bring you the peace you hope they would, you are in the right place. This podcast is about remembering who you were before the world told you who you needed to be. Together, we'll explore the intersection of neuroscience, psychology, ancient wisdom, quantum science, and practical spiritualism to understand how awareness shapes our field and how our field shapes our lives, and why lasting change begins from the inside out. We'll talk about leadership, relationships, health, purpose, emotional well-being, and conscious creation, not as separate parts of life, but as reflections of one thing: our level of alignment. Because most people don't need another strategy. They need a new relationship with themselves. So whether you're leading a business, a family, a team, or simply trying to lead yourself with greater intention, welcome. Take a breath, become the witness, and let's begin. One of the biggest misconceptions in personal development is the idea that our patterns are flaws. I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that people are broken. I don't actually believe that people are lazy. I don't believe that people lack motivation. I believe that people adapt beautifully, intelligently, creatively. The achiever, the perfectionist, the caretaker. How about the people pleaser? The hyper independent one, the one who never asks for help, the one who always has to stay strong. These aren't personality flaws, even if they feel like it. They're survival strategies. Every one of them was born from a nervous system trying to answer one simple question: how do I stay safe? How do I survive? And for a while, they worked. They helped us feel like we belonged. They helped us avoid pain. They helped us receive love, even if it was just the illusion. They helped us make sense of a world that too often felt confusing, unpredictable, or overwhelming. But survival strategies have a hidden problem. They rarely expire on their own. The strategy that protected the 8-year-old often becomes the prison of the 48-year-old. And unless we become aware of it, we continue running yesterday's program in today's life. This is where neuroscience becomes incredibly hopeful. For many years, scientists believed that adult brains were relatively fixed. that once our patterns were established, they were permanent. But over the last few decades, research in neuroplasticity has completely changed that understanding. We now know the brain is constantly changing. Every repeated thought strengthens a neural connection. Every repeated emotion strengthens the neural connections. Every repeated behavioral pattern strengthens the neural connections. The brain becomes more efficient at whatever we repeatedly practice, not because it's deciding what's best, because it's designed to conserve energy. It's efficient. In neuroscience, there's a phrase that's often used: neurons that fire together, wire together. The more often we experience something, the more automatic it becomes, which means if you've spent 20 years worrying, your brain has become exceptionally good at worrying. If you've spent 20 years trying to prove your worth, your brain has become exceptionally good at proving. If you've spent 20 years putting everyone else first, your brain has become exceptionally good at self-abandonment. That isn't failure, that's practice. Your nervous system has simply become efficient at the program it has rehearsed most often. But neuroscience is only part of the story. Psychology helps us understand why those patterns formed in the first place. Attachment researchers have shown that our earliest relationships become the blueprint for how we understand ourselves, other people, and the world all around us, long before we consciously remember childhood. Our nervous system is learning. Is this world safe? Am I safe? Do I matter? Do people come when I need them? Is love conditional? Can I trust? Those early experiences become what psychologists call internal working models, invisible assumptions about life. And because they're unconscious, they don't feel like beliefs. They feel like reality. But remember, assumptions mean us out of you and me. But then something extraordinary happens. Psychoneuroimmunology, one of my favorite fields of study, takes us one step further. It shows us that repeated emotional states don't just influence the mind, they influence the body. Chronic stress changes our hormone production. It influences inflammation, immune function, digestion, sleep, memory, even cardiovascular health. In other words, the body begins practicing the emotional environment it lives inside. So if your nervous system has practiced hypervigilance for 30 years, your biology expects hypervigilant, and the body becomes fluent in survival. And here's where ancient wisdom and modern science begins to hold hands. For thousands of years, spiritual traditions have taught that awareness changes everything. Today, neuroscience is saying something remarkably similar. The moment we become conscious of an automatic pattern, the brain has the opportunity to build a new one. Not overnight, not through a grand breakthrough, but through repetition, through practice, through choice. Small, consistent choices compound faster, far faster than grand gestures. That's how neural pathways are built. That's how identities change. That's how alignment becomes a way of living, which brings us back to the question I asked at the beginning. What has your survival strategy cost you? Not because survival was wrong, but because every strategy eventually asks for a payment. And sometimes that payment is peace. Sometimes it's joy. Sometimes it's intimacy. Sometimes it's purpose. Sometimes it's the quiet belief that you are never enough simply by being yourself. And I think the easiest way to understand this is not through another theory, but it's through people, through stories. People who look remarkably successful on the outside while quietly paying the price on the inside. So let's meet them. I'm going to give you 5 lives, 5 survival strategies, 1 human story. So I want to introduce you to these 5 people. They are different ages. They have different careers. They have different lives. They have different stories. Yet, they're all asking the same question. Why doesn't success feel the way I thought it would? And maybe you'll recognize someone you love. Maybe you'll recognize yourself. So first, I want you to meet Sarah, and it's the cost of achievement. So Sarah's alarm goes off at 5:12 every morning, not because she has to, because she can't relax. Before her feet touch the floor, she's already mentally writing emails, planning meetings, solving tomorrow's problems. She's built an incredible career, and people admire her. They call her driven, disciplined, successful. She smiles when they say those things. But privately, she feels like she's running from something she can't quite name. She tells herself, I'll slow down after this project, or I'll rest after this promotion. I'll enjoy life when everything gets settled. Nothing ever settles, because achievement isn't her actual goal anymore. It's become her nervous system. Sarah wasn't told she only mattered when she achieved. It was so much quieter than that. She noticed which moments brought praise, good grades, being responsible, helping, winning, maybe even producing. And somewhere along the way, her nervous system quietly concluded, if I achieve, I'll be loved. If I produce, I'll be enough. No one intended to teach her that. But children don't hear what we say. They experience what feels true. And now, 40 years later, she doesn't know how to stop. Not because she's addicted to work, because she's addicted to proving. The cost? She can't remember the last dinner she was fully present for. She hears her husband talking while mentally solving tomorrow. She misses moments she can never get back. She has everything she once prayed for and almost no ability to enjoy it. One afternoon, sitting in her car after another 12-hour day, she catches herself whispering, when will I finally be enough? And for the first time, she hears the question, not as a truth, but as a pattern. That moment changes everything. She doesn't quit her job. She doesn't sell the company. She doesn't move to Bali or leave her family. She simply begins practicing something she never practiced before. Pausing. Celebrating one accomplishment before chasing the next one. Taking one full breath before opening the laptop. Leaving work on time just once a week. Small choices. Repeated consistently. Because small, consistent choices compound faster than grand gestures. Wood doesn't stop growing. Wood simply learns. Its worth was never attached to productivity. Its virtue is vision. Vision sees possibility. It doesn't chase approval. Next, let's meet Emma. And it's the cost of belonging. Emma is the person everyone wants at the party. She laughs easily, remembers birthdays, makes strangers feel so welcome. She is sunshine, joy, or at least that's how everyone experiences her. Inside, she's exhausted. She says yes when every cell in her body wants to say no. She apologizes for things that aren't hers. She smooths over conflict before anyone feels too uncomfortable. She tells herself it's easier this way. But every single compromise costs a tiny piece of herself. As a child, connection meant safety. When everyone else was okay, she was okay. When people smiled, life felt predictable or comfortable, safe. So her nervous system quietly learned, I belong when everyone likes me. The cost? She has spent years being loved for a version of herself that isn't entirely real. One day, a friend asks, what do you actually want? And Emma opens her mouth, and nothing comes out. Not because she doesn't have an answer, because she's spent so many years listening to everyone else, she can no longer hear herself. And that realization breaks her heart and frees her at the same time. She begins practicing one tiny habit. Before answering anyone, she silently asks herself, what is true for me? Not tomorrow, today. One question, repeated every single day. Fire discovers something extraordinary. Authenticity creates deeper belonging than performance ever could. It's virtuous joy, real joy, not performed joy. Sarah isn't broken. Emma isn't broken. Neither of them need fixing. They simply learned to survive. And perhaps so did you. In the next part, we're going to meet Michelle, David, and Alex. 3 more beautiful humans whose survival strategies quietly shaped their lives. And then we'll ask one final question. What happens when these same survival strategies begin leading our teams or organizations or culture? Now let's meet Michelle. The cost of carrying everyone. Michelle is the person everyone calls. When someone's marriage is struggling, they call Michelle. When a coworker is overwhelmed, they call Michelle. When the family needs organizing, Michelle somehow makes it all happen. She is dependable, kind, compassionate. She remembers birthdays. She drops off meals. She checks in after doctor's appointments. She notices when someone isn't okay long before they ever say a word. People often tell her, I don't know what we'd do without you. She smiles because being needed feels very familiar. But late at night, when the house is finally quiet, she wonders something she's almost ashamed to admit. Who takes care of me? As a little girl, Michelle learned very early that love wasn't always something she received. Sometimes it was something she created. Maybe her mother was overwhelmed or distracted. Maybe one parent wasn't emotionally available. Maybe she was praised for being such a good girl, so mature, so helpful, the one we never have to worry about. Children are remarkable observers, and our words matter. They don't just listen to words, though. They study emotional energy. Michelle's nervous system quietly decided, if I take care of everyone else, I'll matter. If I don't need anything, I'll always belong. No one intended to teach her that. It simply became the emotional language of love. Now she's 50. She's exhausted. Her calendar is full, day and evenings. Her heart is empty. She's spent years giving people exactly what she secretly longed to receive herself: support, presence, care. And one afternoon, sitting with a client, she hears herself say, "You can't pour from an empty cup." And the room goes quiet, because for the first time, she realizes she isn't talking to her client. She's talking to herself. That single moment of awareness becomes the beginning. Not a grand transformation, a tiny practice. The next time someone asks for help, she doesn't automatically say yes. She pauses. She breathes. She takes a moment to think. And she asks herself one question: do I have the capacity? And sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is no. And slowly, the guilt begins to soften, because she's learning something she was never taught as a child. Receiving doesn't make you selfish. Receiving makes you whole. Earth's virtue is compassion, not self-sacrifice. Compassion. And compassion and service always include yourself. Now, let's go ahead and meet David. And David's going to teach us about the cost of perfection. David is meticulous. He's reliable. The person everyone trusts to get things right. He notices details other people miss. He has incredibly high standards. He's built a successful career because of it. People describe him as disciplined, professional, dependable. But they don't see what happens after everybody else goes home. David replays conversations, questions his decisions, edits emails 5 times before sending them. He lies awake thinking about one sentence he wished he'd said differently. He tells himself he's just being thorough. But underneath the perfection is actually fear. As a little boy, mistakes carried weight. Maybe criticism came quickly. Maybe approval felt conditional. Great job on 98%. What happened to the other 2? Maybe excellence was celebrated while ordinary moments went completely unnoticed. And his nervous system quietly learned, if I get it right, I'll be safe. And if I make a mistake, I'll lose love. No one handed him those beliefs. He built them through his perception, one single experience at a time. And now perfection has become a prison. Projects stay unfinished because they're never quite good enough. Opportunities pass because certainty never arrives. Creativity quietly suffocates under impossible standards. And then one day his granddaughter asks him to help paint a picture. She doesn't stay inside the lines. She mixes colors that don't belong together. She laughs every time paint lands somewhere unexpected. And David realizes she's experiencing something he hasn't felt in decades. Freedom. That afternoon, he intentionally leaves one tiny imperfection in the painting. Nothing terrible happens. No one rejects him. No one withdraws love. And his nervous system experiences something new: safety without perfection. Meadows' virtue is wisdom. Wisdom understands that growth has never required perfection, only presence. His practice becomes beautifully simple. Every week, finish something before it feels perfect. Progress teaches the nervous system that life continues even when excellence isn't flawless. It's about acceptance and appreciation. Now let's talk about Alex and the cost of hiding. So Alex has brilliant ideas. Friends constantly tell him, you should write that book. You should start that business. You should speak. You should apply. You should. and he smiles and he agrees. Then quietly waits. Waits until he feels more confident. Waits until the timing feels right. Waits until he knows enough. Months become years. Years become decades. His dreams remain beautifully organized inside notebooks no one has ever read. As a child, life often felt unpredictable. Sometimes loud, sometimes chaotic, and sometimes emotionally unsafe. Or perhaps he learned that visibility came with criticism. Being seen felt dangerous, so his nervous system developed a quiet strategy. Stay small, observe first, and don't make waves. Don't draw attention. It wasn't a weakness. It was wisdom. It protected him. The cost? The world never receives the gifts he came here to share, and neither does he. One morning, he hears someone say, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving while fear is still in the room. Something shifts. He stops waiting to become fearless. And instead, he decides to become trustworthy to himself. So that afternoon, he shares one post online, one that he'd been rewriting for 6 months. Nothing extraordinary happens, except one thing. He survives being seen. Tomorrow, he shares another, and then another. Small, courageous choices, repeated consistently, until the nervous system slowly learns visibility is no longer dangerous. Water's virtue is trust, not certainty. Trust that life can meet you where courage begins. Self-trust, self-faith. 5 different people, 5 different stories, 5 different survival strategies. Yet underneath every single one of them is the same longing to finally discover that they were enough before they ever learned how to survive. And then something extraordinary happens. These survival strategies don't stay inside us. They become the way we lead, the way we parent, the way we build businesses, the way we shape culture. Because organizations are simply collections of nervous systems interacting with one another. And that's where our conversation is going to go next. You see, there's something else I began to notice over the years. These survival strategies don't stop when we leave childhood, although I wish they would. They don't stop when we become adults. They certainly don't stop when we become leaders. They come with us. They come into our marriages, into our parenting, into our friendships, into every difficult conversation we avoid, into every boardroom, into every organization, because organizations are not buildings. Organizations are collections of human nervous systems interacting with one another, which means if a leader is living from survival, that survival quietly becomes the culture. Imagine Sarah, the wood leader. She never asks anyone to work late. She doesn't have to. Her team watches her answer emails at 11 o'clock at night, skip lunch, never take holidays, always push harder without even saying a word. She teaches them that exhaustion equals commitment. Soon everyone feels behind. Burnout becomes normal, not because she intended it, but because survival is contagious. Now imagine Emma, the fire leader. She desperately wants everyone to feel included. She avoids hard conversations. She softens feedback. She says, it's okay, when actually it's not. Conflict disappears, but so does accountability. People become confused and trust slowly erodes, not because she lacks courage, but because her nervous system learned that belonging meant keeping everyone happy. And sometimes that meant avoiding what we call drama. Now imagine Michelle, the earth leader. She's always available, always helping, always rescuing. She solves problems before anyone else even notices them. Now, at first, everyone loves working for Michelle. But over time, well, her team stops growing. Why? Because she unintentionally teaches them that she will always carry the weight. And the culture becomes dependent instead of empowered. Imagine David. Now, David was the medal leader, so his standards are incredibly high. He catches every mistake, reviews every single document, and corrects every single detail. And eventually, people stop taking initiative, not because they don't care, but because they're afraid of getting it wrong. Innovation quietly disappears. And last, imagine Alex, the water leader. Brilliant ideas, deep wisdom, extraordinary intuition, but he rarely shares it. He waits, he observes, and he keeps thinking, keeps refining. The team never receives the leadership that's sitting quietly inside him. His greatest gift remains hidden in the depths of the ocean. You see, none of these leaders are bad leaders. They're beautiful humans, leading from unconscious survival. And that's something every one of us has done, including me. One of the greatest gifts we can give people we lead is our own awareness. Because awareness changes behavior. Behavior shapes the culture. And our culture, well, it shapes our life. Now, this is all supported beautifully by organizational psychology. Researchers have long studied something called emotional contagion. Quite simply, our emotional states spread. They're infectious. Stress spreads, fear spreads, calm spreads, and trust spreads. So researchers Sigel Bersade and Olivia O'Neill demonstrated that emotions ripple through teams, influencing cooperation, decision-making, creativity, and even performance. We don't leave our emotional state at the door when we arrive at work. We bring it into every interaction, and others unconsciously will begin to synchronize with it. Amy Edmondson's research on psychological safety researched a similar conclusion. The highest performing teams were not ones with the smartest people. They were the ones where people felt psychologically safe. Safe to ask questions, safe to admit mistakes, safe to disagree, safe to learn. Why? Because when the nervous system feels safe, curiosity replaces protection. Innovation replaces perfectionism. And collaboration replaces competition. The same principle exists inside our own lives. So when your nervous system no longer has to survive, it finally has the energy to create. And isn't that what we've all been longing for? Not to simply survive, but to create, to contribute, to love, to live, to be. Maybe you're new here, or maybe you've been here the whole time. In these last months, we've explored awareness, we've explored conditioning, we've explored survival. And maybe you've recognized yourself in Sarah, or in Emma, or Michelle, or David, or Alex. I promise you, I certainly have. And maybe you even noticed pieces of each. The goal was never to diagnose you. It was never to put you in another box. The goal was to help you meet yourself with absolute compassion. Because awareness without compassion often, it becomes judgment. And judgment never creates lasting change. Compassion does. So today, I don't want you to here asking, how do I change my whole life? I want you to ask a completely different question. What's just one small aligned choice I can make today? One honest conversation, one boundary, one deep breath before reacting so you can respond. One evening where work stays closed. One moment of asking for help. One imperfect project instead of endlessly perfected. One courageous act of allowing yourself to be seen. Because here's what I've learned. Breakthroughs are beautiful, but they don't build lives. Habits do. Practices do. Rituals do. Tiny moments of conscious choice, repeated again and again and again. Small, consistent choices compound faster than grand gestures. That's how the nervous system changes. That's how identity changes. That's how relationships change. And that's how leadership changes, how culture changes. And ultimately, that is how lives change. Most people don't have a fixed mindset. They have a survival mindset. And survival mindsets create survival lives, survival relationships, survival leadership, survival workplaces. But awareness changes everything. It's the first step because awareness reveals and then alignment chooses. And then creation follows. If today's conversation stirred something in you, I want to invite you to take the free 5-element alignment assessment. It's designed to help you understand not only your dominant element, but the survival strategy that may be quietly shaping your life. Because once you can see the pattern, you no longer have to live from it. And if you're ready to go even deeper, that's exactly the work we do inside Align Your Life, inside Aligned Living and the Alignment Operating System. Not by becoming someone new, but by remembering who you've always been beneath the conditioning. Remember, you are the witness. You shape the field, and the field shapes your life. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. My hope is that you leave each episode not with more information, but with greater awareness, because awareness is where every meaningful change begins. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to stop surviving and start living from alignment. If you'd like to continue this work, you can join us inside the Aligned Human Project community. Explore the free 5-element alignment assessment or learn more about Align Your Life, Aligned Living, and Alignment Operating System at practicalspiritualismco.com. Remember, Awareness reveals. Alignment chooses. And creation follows. You are the witness. You shape the field, and the field shapes your life. Until next time, keep pausing, keep noticing, and keep choosing. I'll see you in the next episode.